know.
So when you were at that Thompson thing, were you working as a matchmaker in that thing, or no?
No, that wasn't until like my matchmaking stuff. So here's what happened when I started getting off of the whole writing thing. I started approaching fighters about managing them. So I was kind of started out as a manager first, and I did assemble from roughly like 03 to 08, let's 07, 08. Let's say I did assemble. I probably managed 15 guys during that time, and really nobody of really any note. I had guys that had good careers at the club level, and just opponent type guys. I think the first real good guy that I managed was a guy named Eric Fields, who I thought is a cruiserweight from Oklahoma, was a very special athlete who just I thought he could project into a heavyweight someday. And if he had a chance to be really, really good. It was if his career ball had bounced one way or the other, he could be maybe not a household name, but at least a boxing fans common name that people know who he is. So, but really what happened was I promoted a show in 06 in Bakersfield as the promoter. And it was a brutal experience. I did use a matchmaker named Jimmy Montoya, who I learned a lot from. He's an old timer, a real old school hardcore boxing guy. He's still alive. He's living in Arizona. He's getting on in years, but I'm a type of person that's very resistant to learning. So I would rather learn on my own. And so he was trying to pound some things into me. And I just thought, he's a crazy old bastard. I don't want to listen to him. And he always said, someday everything I told you, you're going to find out was true. And he was right. It all turned out to be true. And I say the same thing to other young guys. Like, look, anything I tell you, it's just take it to the bank, man, because I've already been down the road and you're going to find out one way or another. You may as well just trust me. And it's a hard ass business, And anyway, so I started managing these fighters, put on a show, lost probably 20 grand. Putting on this show in 06. I didn't have that kind of money to lose. So it was just a brutal introduction. But really when I started matchmaking was I decided I really didn't want to manage fighters anymore. So I just kind of became a booking agent. And so what I started doing is I don't need to put these guys on paper. I can just put them in a fight here. So I just amassed a bunch of different fighters that I was chucking into fights nationwide. Mm-hmm. And that went very well for quite a few years.
Were people coming to you saying, "Hey, Whit, we need 2 featherweights for a thing," and then you would say, "Oh, what's the area? Oh, I know these 2 guys," and then you would like a fee.
So typically, the way a card is made, the A side set, and then you go out and you fill. Maybe not at the top of the card on a major card. There, you have to make compelling matches for pay-per-view, but underneath that, it's a list of A side guys. And my job historically has been to fill the B side. Right. And so I always had the B side guys from around the country, especially, west of the Rockies. And I would try to have exclusive rights so for example, I did a lot of work with Golden Boy and Robert Diaz in the latter half of the 2000s, the decade of the 2000s. And so my deal was, when I got the list, it was my list. Okay. It's not to be shared with other booking agents. And we didn't have a lot of booking agents back then. We really didn't, because social media wasn't a thing. Facebook didn't exist. MySpace. I think there was MySpace, and people weren't out there sending messages to people on MySpace asking if they want to fight. I never made a fight through social media in my life. I always knew trainers and managers that had fighters. And so that was the link. And I never liked going straight to the fighter to make the fights. I typically wanted there to be somebody, if a fighter pulls out of a fight, I want someone left holding the bag. If a fighter pulls out of the fight and you point your finger at the fighter, they can just say F you and retire. I want someone to hold accountable, man. So if your guy bails on me, it's going to suck for that person, because they're going to have to pay a price, perhaps with their other parts of their stable, or, they'll run themselves out of the business because they can't deliver. Let me make no mistake. And this is something for your audience to understand. When something goes wrong with a fight or a pro show, and I believe this is true, it's the matchmaker's fault, because there's so many, like, let's just say a guy pulls out of a fight, for example, or comes in heavy. It's funny how they always blame the fighter. Yeah, it's the fighter's fault for missing weight, but really whose fault it is the matchmaker. And I see so many instances where it's a lack of understanding on the part of that matchmaker, where they're not looking properly at the weight history and saying, okay, I'm going to put a guy in at, I get fighters all the time say, I'm moving down to welterweight. I say, yeah, but your whole career is at 54. Now suddenly you're a 47 and you want to fight on my show. I always say, yeah, that's called daredevil matchmaking. I'm just inviting failure by letting you, okay, you're going to go fight at 47 somewhere else and then talk to me, but I'm not going to be the guy to let you screw me.
Right.
Other thing where if I go to a guy's resume and I see that he's never fought, gotten on a plane before to fight, and let's say he lives in New York and I got a show in LA, I don't want him, because it takes a leap of faith for someone to get on a plane and go fight somebody. And I don't want to be the guy that, hey, you know what, it never fails, day or two before, I got in a car accident. You know how many times I've heard that one? I got in a car accident. People suddenly can't drive 2 days before they're supposed to get on a plane. Or I went running and I sprained my ankle. You know how many sprained ankles? Like, people just suddenly can't drive and they can't run or walk without injuring themselves. Suddenly, it's just amazing how that all works,
Is this okay? So then, at some point in this, is after you're amassing this? Is this when you go to work for Roy?
Yeah. So Roy was 09. Roy was 09, and concurrently at that time, I was the matchmaker for a guy named Brian Hallquist up in the state of Washington. He had a program called Battle at the Boat at the Emerald Queen Casino. It was an awesome, awesome club show. And so I was doing both those at the same time. Plus, I was booking fights, for Golden Boy and a little bit for Top Rank. But mainly Golden Boy at that time. Golden Boy.
And then how does Top Rank and Golden Boy come to know who Whit Haydon is? Because you've gone from being this, like you said, and I was one too, the scrub writer, to suddenly, hey, you're way more important than all those people, and you're working with the people that make the content that these writers are writing about.
Yeah. I guess they just see me out at the fights, and I made my first fight with Top Rank, I want to say in 05, if I'm not mistaken. I remember I used Kendrick Relaford against Tye Fields. I think that was the first time I actually managed Kendrick, who was a really good journeyman heavyweight. He could give anybody problems. We had a lot of good journeymen back 20 years
ago. And Tye Fields, God bless him, big guy, had a lot going for him, but if you had some talent, you could give him problems.
Yes, no question. Yeah, and Kendrick, I think he lit him up for a couple rounds, and then Tye just kind of bared down on him at that point in time, and so much for that. It was good while it lasted, but it was a lot of fun,
When you were matching for Roy for Fight Club OC, Roy Engelbrecht Promotions, were you doing other like as a matchmaker, do you have to be exclusive, or are you able, or does it all depend on your contract? Like if you work for Top, or with the PBC, are you exclusive? How does that work?
Yeah, for the PBC, I do very little outside work other than with this Toro company. Toro, I'm sure we'll get into that in a bit, but with the PBC, I'm plenty busy with the PBC. I don't do too much outside work, if at all.
And PBC happened after Roy, because I remember when they came on the scene, and I remember overhearing something. I was talking to Drew, Roy's son.
Right.
Or anyone listening,